That is a total lie and a fraud. First of all, Secretary General of the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities, Zahi Hawass, refused to release any DNA results which might indicate the racial ancestry of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. This should be the end of the story, you would think. He never released it, but no. For the Eurocentrists,
mystery mummy are analyzed and amplified. They've been focusing on the Y chromosome, which is passed from fathers to sons. The results.
This video is a fraud. The Eurocentrists saw this as an opportunity. In fact, some of them indicated that the reason Zahi Hawass did not want to release the DNA studies is because he did not like the results and he was patronizing Africans, basically, or black Africans, who basically believed that the Tut and the majority of the Egyptians were in fact black. Well, that is a lie in itself, because Zawi has always maintained, because of his bias, his racial bias, he has always maintained that they were not black. So if anything, the only reason he would not release the studies is because the DNA studies confirmed that he was black, and that's just common sense.
I read through a process called DNA fingerprinting. This charts the Y chromosome as a series of 15 peaks. In a modern-day paternity suit, matching just 10 of these peaks will convince a court of law. As they compare Amenhotep III and the mystery mummy from Tomb 55, the peaks start to line up.
The first one is 55, and the second one is Amenhotep III.
Incredibly, 10 peaks line up perfectly. They've got a match. The
DNA test results were inadvertently revealed on a Discovery Channel TV documentary filmed with Harry's permission, but it seems as if the Egyptian failed to spot the giveaway part of the documentary. Let's back up. Which revealed the test results. At approximately 1:53 into the video, the camera pans over a printout of DNA test results from King Tut. A retired physicist named Whit Athy was watching this. He saw some DNA data on a TV show, scientifically analyzed it, and came up with his proof that King Tut was European. Let me go through that again, lest you miss it. Because stupid people and Eurocentrists, and oftentimes they are synonymous, they conveniently suspend logic and common sense. Again, Zawi never released the DNA test results. At approximately 1:53 into the video, the cameras pan over a printout of a DNA test results from King Tut. A retired physicist named Whit Athy was watching this. He saw some DNA data on a TV show, scientifically analyzed it, and came up with his proof that King Tut was a European. Of course, there is no proof given that the shown data was that of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. It could have been anybody's DNA test being used as a prop for a TV show. I know that you can do better than that. Now, let me go over that again, because it's so important, and I know people are going to miss it. Because you see these men in these white labs obviously doing a DNA test. And you say, okay, it looks legitimate, it looks authentic. But the fact of the matter is, the DNA test results were never released. You had a physicist who looked at these results and assumed that that was the results of the King Tut DNA exam. Well, I hate to bust anyone's bubble. Actually, I don't. Frankly, I enjoy it, to be honest with you. But King Tut was most definitely not European. And we're going to prove that conclusively to anyone that has logic or common sense. And I'm aware of the DNA fraudulent lie that has been postulated, but we're going to expose that as well. For the past couple of years, this theory that King Tut was of Western European heritage has been circulating throughout various corners of the internet and academia. This information was supposedly leaked by a Discovery Channel documentary. And of course, those who have a vested interest in postulating this lie have picked that fraudulent information up and ran with it. That documentary shows bits of King Tut's genetic profile briefly for barely a full second. However, a genetics expert saw the information and was miraculously able to peg him as being European. Now, this whole idea that you can gain this type of information from a brief second shown on a computer screen is supremely problematic and flawed, and we will address that later on this video, on a later video. It is astounding the lengths that they will go through. Anyway, since it was published, this theory has been embraced by a major genetics company as well as hundreds of people worldwide. However, recently released genetic study by the company DNA Tribes sharply refutes the Western European theory of King Tut's ancestry. And we're going to take a look at what DNA Tribes has to say about that. So we're going to go directly to a credible source. The genetics company then analyzed their data and based on 8 autosomal markers determined that their DNA most matches that of modern day African peoples. That is DNA Tribes. Don't take it from me. We're going to show it to you. Now, their research uncovered, DNA Tribes, their research covered a few scant markers from other parts of the world, such as the Levant and the Mediterranean. This indicates that Tut and his family were somewhat mixed, but absolutely not Caucasoid. However, the majority of their DNA clusters firmly with other Africans. The parts of Africa that they most align with are tropical West Africa, Southern Africa, and the Great Lakes region of Southeastern Africa. So, the DNA results are in, and they clearly peg King Tut as a black African. The implications that this has for our understanding of ancient Egypt are huge. Furthermore, these studies seem to vindicate the writings of the ancient Greeks, which state clearly that the ancient Egyptians were black Africans, and they also seem to vindicate ancient Egyptian creation myths. For the ancient Egyptians, civilization itself was synonymous with the Nile. Thus, the Egyptians like to believe that they originated in the same place that this great river, the Nile River, originated. One of the origin points for the Nile is the Great Lakes region of Africa, one of the regions that matches Tut's DNA. DNA Tribes, Genetic Ancestry Analysis. Let's see what the New York Times has to say about this. Promises to satisfy the human hunger to learn about one's origins and sometimes much more. Think you know your roots? An ancestral DNA test unearthed a few of mine and some big surprises too. Time Magazine. Let's go to, let's see. Frequently asked questions. What is DNA Tribes Genetic Ancestry Analysis? DNA Tribes Genetic Ancestry Analysis tests autosomal DNA inherited from both your maternal and paternal ancestors. Since 2006, DNA Tribes has performed the most comprehensive analysis of world genetic structure. Our ongoing research explores the genetic links between cultures around the world, challenging old ideals about ancestry and identity. Your DNA Tribes test results locate the world populations and regions where your unique DNA profile is shared, including a detailed comparison to African, Asian, European, and Native American populations. For more information about our global database of over 1,000 populations from around the world, click here. Let's see. How does DNA tribes stand out from other services? Let's look at where it says industry standard markers. DNA tribes analysis uses autosomal STR marker systems that have been the industry standard relied on by police investigators and ordinary citizens in U.S. courts of law for 10 years. These powerful markers not only provide personal genetic identification virtually unique to each person, they allow DNA tribes proprietary identification of the most detailed map of world genetic regions performed to date. Expert data analysis. DNA tribes proprietary analysis was developed by Dr. Eduardes Valiatas, PhD in statistics from Yale University 2005, whose expertise in multivariate classification allows us to provide the most detailed and comprehensive regional analysis available anywhere. Your DNA tribes analysis will incorporate our ongoing original research to identify genetic relationships around the world. Okay, so what we need to focus on is the fact that DNA tribes has their entire reputation standing on the information they put out. If they were shown to be not credible, this entire site, which focuses its business upon providing DNA test results, would crumble. It would crash and burn. Okay, so therefore, it is not in their interest to put out false information that cannot be quantified by other physicists who also specialize in DNA research. Now, we're going to go to an article. So what we were trying to do first is establish the legitimacy and the credibility of DNA tribes. And you can go to the website yourself. And in order to debunk what I'm going to show you, you're going to have to debunk DNA tribes. And you're also going to have to debunk the New York Times, Time Magazine, and all of the scientific journals that basically support what they do. And you're going to have to support the legitimacy and the credibility of the DNA specialists who graduated from colleges like Yale University, Harvard, Stanford, places like that, who really know what they're talking about. You, the layperson, the ignorant Eurocentrist, have an uphill climb trying to debunk these facts. Now, obviously, if what I'm going to show you from DNA tribes supported your Eurocentric ideologies, you would have no problem with it, but I know you're going to have a problem with it because you don't like the truth. I'm fully aware of that. Previous digest articles. Let's look. What do they have? Genetic evidence for multiple ways of migration to America. Genetic evidence for 2 Indo-European expansion routes in Asia. Genetic links in Eastern Europe. Genetic links in East Mediterranean. Celtic language origins and geographical links in Northwest Europe. Genetic links in the Iberian Peninsula, the indigenous Cran Chaco region of South America, non-local components of European regions. Early links between Europe and the Caucasus. Genetic links in the Indus Valley. Admission results by population, DNA tribes. Let's see. Let's go down. The North African region. Genetic links and language expansion in Eastern Africa. Here we go. DNA Tribes Digest for January 1, 2012. Last of the Armada Pharaohs, King Tut and his relatives. This month's article features an analysis of several mummies, including the famous King Tut and his relative. These individuals lived in a unique time more than 3,000 years ago, the Armada period, which has left a vivid archaeological record of life in pharaonic Egypt. Okay, well, let's see what they have to say. Other than mountains that they dug tunnels into, and now they're trying to call them pyramids because all mountains are shaped in the form of a pyramid. That's how desperate they are. Let's see what they have here. Table of contents, introduction. Last of the Armada Pharaohs, King Tut and his relatives, historical background, genetic analysis of Armada mummies, conclusion. Okay. Hello and welcome to January 2012 issue of DNA Tribes. This month's article features an analysis of several mummies, including the famous King Tut and his relatives. These individuals lived at a unique time more than 3,000 years ago, the Armada period, which has left a vivid archaeological record of life in pharaonic Egypt. Okay, we're going to go to 3, genetic analysis of Armada mummies, where they're going to explain and show us how they have concluded that King Tut was Caucasian. That's what the Eurocentrists want to believe. Well, let's see what the facts are. Let's start here. Let's see what the facts are. Genetic analysis of Armada mummies. Geographical analysis of the Armada mummies was performed using their autosomal STR profiles based on 8 tested loci. Results are summarized in Table 1 and illustrated in Figure 1. Maps for individual Armada mummies are included in Figures 2 through 8 in the appendix. Discussion. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty in a moment. Average MLI scores in Table 1 indicate the STR profiles of the Armada mummies would be most frequent in present-day populations of several African regions, including the Southern African average, MLI 326.94. African Great Lakes average, MLI 323.76. And Tropical West Africa average, MLI 83.74 regions. These regional matches do not necessarily indicate an exclusive African ancestry for the Armada pharaonic family. However, results indicate these ancient individuals inherited some alleles that today are more frequent in populations of Africa than in other parts of the world, such as D18S51 equal 19 and D21S11 equal 34. Okay, so let's go through that first part again. The average scores indicate the STR profiles of Armada mummies would be most frequent in present-day populations of several African regions, including Southern African, African Great Lakes, and Tropical West African. So let's take a closer look at it. MLI for world region. And let's go all the way over here to King Tut. Here he is, King Tut. Southern African, 1,519.03. African Great Lakes, 1,328.01. Tropical West African, 314. Now, I realize that many of you may watch this video and you're not quite sure what you're looking at. I fully understand that. You have not studied the science of DNA, and this doesn't really mean a lot to you, and you don't quite get it. I'm going to break this down for a layperson, where you would have to actually hire somebody to help you misunderstand what you're looking at. That's how simple I'm going to make it. Here's what we need to look at. This is King Tut, and this is his DNA results. And this is showing the regions that the population, the current population that King Tut, the King Tut mummy, shares DNA most with the current population in these areas. Southern African, the number is 1,519. African Great Lakes, 1,328. Tropical West African, 314. Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, places like that, 44.35. Surprisingly, he has more Tropical West African DNA than he does Horn of Africa DNA. Now let's go down to Northwestern European, 5.33. 5.23. And North African, white people like to claim North Africa. Remember, we're not talking about ancient populations, we're talking about current populations. And we can all agree that the current population of North African is primarily Caucasoid and more Caucasoid, which is why King Tut, who obviously is black, only shares a small portion of his DNA with the present population of North Africa, but he shares a much larger portion of his DNA with Southern Africa, African Great Lakes, tropical West African, Horn of Africa. That is primarily where he comes from. He has small, I mean, I have more Northwestern European DNA in me than King Tut does. And I'm definitely not white. I mean, do you want to look at my DNA results from this same source? I have more Northwest European in me than King Tut does. And I'm black. So I'm sorry, but you people lose. And I realize that you can go to some misinformation, some blogs and some websites by some people that speak intelligently and they sound credible, some news sources who are involved in postulating this false ideal of these of these other DNA results that Zahi Hawass has never released and will not release because he does not want you to see this very same thing. Why the hell do you think he won't release the official results? And what you guys don't realize is that when you look at those other videos that talk about King Tut's DNA results, basically that is a news source who got a glimpse of the actual factual data and put that information out there because they sound credible. You guys suck it up with a sponge. Okay? It's easy to discredit them, but in order to discredit what I'm putting out, you don't have to try to discredit me because I'm giving you the source, DNA Tribes. Now, let's look a little bit more at what DNA Tribes has to say. Now, first of all, I want you to emblazon this into your brain. These are the facts. Mediterranean, North African, Mesopotamian, combined. All of that combined. I mean, look, it's 5.33, 6.04. It's ridiculous. But then when you go to that which is clearly and undeniably, irrefutably black, you have Southern African 1,519.03. Okay? So no matter how you look at it, you can look at this number. Like I said, you don't have to understand any of this. All you know is that everybody knows that 2 is bigger than 1 and 10 is bigger than 2. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to understand. Like I said, you have to hire somebody to help you misunderstand this. Now, the Eurocentrist is such a liar, they will try to deceive those who don't understand DNA results and try to convince you that the lower number means that he has more in common with them, but that would just expose their stupidity. But they're probably dumb enough to try something like that.